Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome to this week's episode of Beckoning Brilliance. I'm your host, Becca, and today my guest is Mary Harcourt. Mary is the founder and CEO of the CosmoGlo light. It's a shadowless arc light which solves multiple issues that the beauty industry was facing in regards to lighting. It has changed the beauty industry and is now taking over any industry that does precision work. I talked with Mary about her transition from lash artist to salon owner turned innovator. With no background in manufacturing, she took the downtime she had during COVID to turn her idea into a reality. She has been featured in Forbes and multiple publications, and she travels around the country doing speaking engagements, talking about taking your ideas and turning them into a reality, and she shares her best business knowledge with everyone. She's incredibly open and generous with what she's learned, so whether you're a salon owner or have a great idea that will change the game, you're sure to feel inspired by her brilliant wisdom. Let's get into it. Mary, hi.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes, my pleasure. So for anyone that doesn't know, you are the inventor of the CosmoGlo light, which is like the perfect light. I have it in my room, and I think every esthetician that I know also has it in their room as well. You've really changed the game and have created something that you really solved a problem that we all had in the industry. Every light that I ever used, like you said, it was too hot. There was always shadows. So you really created something that I couldn't live without at this point in my life. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you so much for the nice introduction.
Yeah. So a little bit about your background. I know you started off in the beauty industry doing hair, and then you transitioned into skin waxing, and then eventually ended on doing lashes. And then you opened your own business. You ran a successful business. You were one of the highest rated salons in LA. And obviously through all of your experience with clients and having a staff, having issues with lights, I know you came up with the CosmoGlo idea in 2019. You wrote it down on a napkin, and I know that you said if you ever had the time, you would turn that into a reality. So I know that once COVID finally hit, you actually said, okay, I'm going to do this. Do you think that CosmoGlo would have happened had COVID not ever transpired and made us all shut down?
I mean, isn't that the biggest question? I don't know. I don't think it would have happened at the time that it would have happened. Definitely having a COVID pivot. I mean, I went from fully booked, having a staff, taking clients, doing everything from payroll at 11 o'clock at night on a Friday to ordering supplies to all of a sudden having like a cleared schedule. Our salon was closed for an indefinite time. We didn't know how long. And so at that time, it was a nice area of pivot going, whoa. I always said if I ever get the time and it looks like my schedule just got wiped clean, this is the time. But I don't know. It's interesting because sometimes you get in a nice groove, right? And I was in a really good groove with my salon. I liked what I did. I loved my clients, loved my staff. I loved being there. I loved doing what I was doing. But you do always wonder what else is out there. And maybe at some point I would have grown up enough to say I should have really launched this idea. But at the time, that wasn't where my mindset was. And then COVID did happen where it just became a connect A to B because, wow, well, I might as well get this started. Who knows how long we'll be closed for? So I don't know if it would have happened or not. It definitely wouldn't have happened as fast as it did thanks to COVID.
God, COVID was such a scary time for everyone in the salon industry. So terrifying. I can't imagine like owning an actual business too when you have a staff and everyone is kind of relying on you. Like, how are we going to do this? And you're probably like, I don't know.
Well, exactly. The phone calls were like, but how do we get paid? And how do I pay my rent? And how, like, what do we do about paychecks? I'm like, guys, I don't know. Like, I've never been through this either. Let's figure it out. Right. Luckily, I'm really close with my staff, and it became like, let's figure it out. And there were programs set up to apply for this and apply for that. And so we did all of that. And I felt like as an owner and as a boss, once we got everyone situated, it was like a nice little breath of relief to be like, okay, we're all going to make it through this and we're all in this together. But I couldn't imagine if you didn't have those options, how just stressful, it already was so stressful, but how much more stressful it would have been.
So having the idea to produce the light, I feel like once you have a big idea or like a life-changing shift that you want to make, a lot of people will kind of instill their fear into you. They'll project their insecurities onto you. So when you finally had the idea and you realized, wow, this is going to be a huge thing that could change the industry, and you wanted to sell your salon, did you kind of hold that idea close to you as to not hear those little voices, kind of in your ear being like, what are you doing? Why are you leaving a successful business to follow your dreams?
It was weird. What I think when you overthink things and you give yourself a long runway, you have that time of freak out. I didn't have a long runway. I had no intention of ever making this a real product. I was just using it in my salon because I hated every light out there. And if I could just make them and make my staff happy and they worked for us, then that was a win. And then all of a sudden it became, well, you have no income from your salon's not open, and you have this other product. If you wanted to launch it, like, now's your time. And so I just kind of closed one door and opened the other and said, now we're doing this. And I took it as fast as possible and as quickly as possible, because we didn't know how long COVID would last. We all thought it would be 3 weeks. And then we changed our minds to, okay, it's going to be 3 months. Nobody knew it would almost be a year, and we're still dealing with it. So I think for me, I didn't give myself enough time to have the freak out or really gather other people's opinions. It was, well, this is what I'm doing, and I'm going to do it as fast as possible because I don't know how much time I have.
So I know that there's a certain level of control when you own a business. I know you've talked a lot about all the research that you did as far as, moving to another state and actually figuring out how to start your own business and have staff and have employees. So transitioning from that into doing something that you've never done before. I know that you didn't have any history with manufacturing and producing a product. So was that hard for you to relinquish that control and put your baby into someone else's hands?
It's interesting when you're in the industry, you kind of feel like there's a path. You go to school, start there. Then you work for somebody. When you feel like you've gained enough skills and you're strong enough and you have a big enough clientele, you step out for yourself, and then you work by yourself until you feel like maybe you're too busy and you're ready for a staff. And then you kind of build up these things, and there's certain steps. When you go into an industry that you have no clue how it works, I call it cannonballing into the unknown. You just jump in, and then once you're in, you're in. So now how fast can we rev up and figure everything out? It wasn't like I had a set path, and it wasn't like, oh my God, the next step's going to get here. And then the next step. Mine was, hey, how do I get this? And I would just search for answers until somebody said yes. And then we'd go to the next step. Okay, how can I do this? How can I do this? And so because of that, it relinquished all of my fear, and I didn't have any little voices because I didn't have time to listen to them. And B, it wasn't like I had a paved way that if one thing didn't go right or as planned, I freaked out. It was more so like, I have no clue what I'm doing. So let's get this done as fast as possible, as quickly as possible. And really just by asking so many questions. And I think I was so prepared for the no's that it didn't strike me. I didn't take it personally when people said, no, we don't do those kind of projects. It was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I'll find somebody who will. And I think sometimes you can set yourself up where, oh God, I got to know it didn't go exactly how I had planned, but I didn't really have a plan. So there wasn't a sense of damn, that was a rough day. I didn't get what I want. I had no idea what I needed or what I wanted. It was like, I have an idea and we're going to make it happen. And that was really special. I often think had I known what it really took, I don't know if I would have done it. It's not easy. It's not comfortable. And it was really hard to switch industries into a completely different industry that I had no clue. But also I love that it happened the way it did, because it allowed me to just go in and search for yeses.
Yeah, I think that would be hard for me if I had an idea to then present it to someone. And I feel like sometimes when you don't have the confidence to know how to speak up for yourself, I think that would be really hard. So did you ever have to deal with any fear regarding that? Because I feel like, especially maybe being a female too, if people were trying to intimidate you at all.
I didn't deal with that. It's funny. I actually launched I was launching a whole set of tweezers while I was launching CosmoGlo, and I got those fully through. There's this really cool coating. Maybe I'll do it in my future, but no one else is using it in the industry, and I love it so much. And so for me, it was like training wheels to figure out how I could get these tweezers made with a certain coating, and then I had them dipped in a certain other coating to give them the color I want, and there was nothing like it. And that was such a challenge, I remember emailing like, I think 100 people were like, hey, I'm looking for this coating. They say, oh, we don't do that coating. That's for like bathtubs and stuff. You want this type of coating. I'd be like, oh, great. That's the type of coating I want. And they say, yeah, well, we only deal with million pieces. Your order's too small. And then eventually I found someone that said, yeah, we can do it. We can even make like a little laser engraved logo if you want. And so kind of doing that project got me training wheels on understanding. You just got to ask more questions. If someone says, hey, we don't do that, do you know anyone that does? Or, okay, this order size is too large for you. And that's great. I respect that. Are there typically people that work with smaller sizes? And then they'll say, well, if you go down this route, usually they'll be more able to work with you. And it's like, oh, thank you so much. Okay, great. And then you call that person and they give you a yes, where it's like, hey, yeah, we take projects your size. So that's kind of the fun part of just investigating.
Yeah, I love that you were able to take the no and kind of pivot and turn it into a different opportunity. I think a lot of people would hear no and think, okay, maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe I should stop pursuing it.
I think I just didn't know anything. And so when you don't know anything, like you're not really scared of being turned down because it's not like you've had this expectation in your head. It's going to go like this and then it didn't. It was like, I have no clue what I'm even asking or looking for, but if you could direct me in the right way, that would be so helpful. And after a while, somebody did. And then that's where it all kind of launched and started from there.
That's amazing. I really appreciate that your products are made in the United States. Do you feel like that has also given you another level of control?
Yes. That was a kind of weird COVID thing as well. I don't know that we would have done it had it not been COVID. But if you remember back, borders were closing. International was getting really sketchy. Nobody knew what was happening. Airports were closing. International guests weren't allowed in. And so when it came to product development, the last thing you want to do is invest all of this money and maybe never hear from the person again or see the product. And so it caused us to look inward. Where I started with neighborhoods, like, hey, I heard that you are a machine shop that does this. Can you make this product? It's like, well, we can make your prototype, but we're not going to like long-term manufacture it. Okay, if I was to long-term manufacture it, who would I want to look for? Well, you want to look for a contract manufacturer. Okay, where do I find those? And like eventually I found someone and they said, yeah, we can take your project. And so we took it from a prototype to actually manufacturing, but it was local. And I think that because of COVID, the cost of shipping has gone up so high with these, what are they called? The big shipping containers. And just a lot has changed. There's new tariffs that have been placed that if you import in, you have to pay a special tax that used to never exist. And so it used to be that manufacturing was always cheaper overseas. And they kind of balanced the table that it's about the same price. And then you have pluses or minuses. So you might be able to get a little bit cheaper, but you might lose all of that in shipping, manufacturing, taxes and tariffs. Where here, we manufacture in the USA, we use American products. My clamps are made in New Jersey. The steel is American steel. It's powder coated on site. It's assembled by American workers and put into a box, tested and shipped out to my customers. But it comes off the production line and literally the day it gets put in a box, gets stickered and picked up by FedEx and delivered to the customer. So having that quick turnaround is really healthy for a company's cash flow, because if I had to wait 3 months while things came over on boats, it's a lot to invest, especially somebody like me who did completely switch industries and never really planned for this. It was more so like, let's see if I can do it. And American manufacturing for me, I think is what made it all possible.
Going back to you inventing tweezers. So have you always been that kind of creative, like problem solver?
I think I have. Me buying my spa was the first time I was a business owner, but I was always a super hard worker. I actually really enjoy working. It's like something I can get stuck in. And so even as a young person, I got myself in a world of debt because I never had a credit card before and I never lived on my own. And when I had a credit card, I would always put like $100 or $200 on it. Well, you can pay that off every month. So when I got my first apartment, I was like, oh my God, I need all new furniture. I need new bowls, silverware, glasses. I'm going to have the cutest little bathroom. I'm going to have the best in my bedroom. I want the cutest comforter. I want the best art. And I went and racked up this credit card bill. And so that was like a whole, oh my God, girl, you just got yourself in $20,000 worth of debt and you can't even make your rent. So the learning curve for me, I had to bite off and go, okay, well, I'm never going to get out of debt if I work a single job. That's just reality. So if I go above and beyond and work a second job and I can pay off this credit card, it taught me a lesson that you should really live within your means. And we'll go from there. But so that was a lesson, and I got myself out of debt, and that was the best feeling in the whole entire world when you pay that last credit card payment and you are 100% debt free. And I looked at my life and said, wow, I'm running a full-time job and I'm also doing a part-time job. And I actually really enjoy working. Like, I enjoy being able to spend my days around people and talk and socialize and have fun. And I'm doing it for other people. Imagine if I had two jobs and I saved all of that money. And one of the jobs was for my bills and one of the jobs was for me to just go have fun. So I did that, and I realized that you can make great money. And one was just in a savings account. And from that savings account, I just kept working and working and working until one day I decided I'm going to quit everything and go travel. And I said, well, here's the time. I'm young. I'm completely debt free. I have a savings account. I'm going to take that savings account and go travel the world. And so I took it and traveled on and off for about 2 years. I visited over the span. Now I'm much older. I've been to 64 countries overall, but I would say I covered about 24 in that year and a half, 2 years. And I think that has so much to do with it, is understanding how money works, that you can, as much as you want to make, you can make, as much as you want to save, you can save, but have a plan that when you're ready to use it, that it's there. Getting out of debt is so important. Living within your means is so important. But also going to these different countries and seeing how people live and how resourceful they are, and that they have nothing like what we are privileged to have in the United States, but they're so happy and they're making it work. And it's such a great environment that I think that's really where my mind started going, like, wow, you can make anything work. Like, if you have an idea what you want, you can use anything around you to make it. And so fast forward, came back, started working, still kept the two jobs. And then that's when I opened my own salon, because it's like, well, I have this money. I think I'm going to open my own salon and see what that's like. And that was hard. That was not anything that I would recommend, except for if you're ready for it. And it was a huge learning curve. But me bunkering down to understand how to run a business and how it works to staff and how it works to market and how it works to build clientele, these are all little pieces. So when it came to CosmoGlo, I feel like I relied on all of those lessons I learned in life, how cash flow works, how thinking outside the box can work, how if you have an idea and you want it, you can make it happen with things around you, and understanding how business works and understanding how marketing and social media and all of that stuff played into launching CosmoGlo. But it's not like I woke up one day, had an idea, made it happen, and got where I am. It was all the little steps along the way that was my life story that combined into one to be like, okay, now's the moment to shine. Let's do this.
I really appreciate how much you focus on like the business, like numbers aspect of it, because I feel like that is really hard for a lot of people in this industry. I've been an esthetician for 19 years, and I feel like it's so much of like a creative industry, and we're so much about people and, just making everything pretty, where a lot of times we don't know how to take care of our books and taxes and all that stuff. It seems like you have given so much credit to taking business courses and how that's changed your life. So I actually met you at an aesthetics conference here in Dallas. I remember I actually came in late to your talk, but as soon as I walked in, I was like, I need to talk to her. I need to get to know her. And so I've been kind of, following your career ever since. You've always been very transparent and open with your advice. But is it kind of a cool, like, full circle moment now that you are the one on stage helping everyone out?
Yeah, it is full circle. And I always say, like, I'm so similar to you. Like, I would sit in these classrooms and I would take it all in. If I made it to the show floor for 5 minutes just to run around and see what was on sale, then I made it. But I didn't go for that. I went for the classes. And I always felt like every time that you sit in a class, you gain more knowledge. And that knowledge is so empowering. I had no clue how to run a business. I almost lost my business. I was upside down and I couldn't work any more hours. I was working 6 days a week, taking clients from 8 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. And I still wasn't making my rent. So I had to go get a bartending job to cover that. And through it all, I realized, like, this is no way to live. I need to learn how to run a business. And so I couldn't really make my rent, but also there was a course that was just as much as my rent. And it was like, hey, we take salon people and we transform them and teach them how to run a business. You should be here. And it was like, God, I should be there, but this is a huge investment. And I thought, well, I'm going to lose it one way or the other. I'm already upside down. So if I can learn how to run a business, then that would change everything. And wouldn't you know, it really did. Like I went in there kind of just awestruck of how simple it is. But if you don't know, you don't know. And they did everything from, come to find out, I had to raise my prices. I actually doubled my prices, which is crazy. If anyone ever goes through this, it's the most terrifying thing to do, to tell someone that, hey, your fill goes from $50 an hour to $100 an hour. And I had a shedding of clients, but also it was the first time I became profitable. And then they taught you how to interview. They taught you how to write job ads. They taught you the questions you should look. And they taught you kind of how to do payroll. Like they taught everything. And it was a mini weekend of just everything so in depth. But that's the weekend that changed my life into understanding how to run a business. And once I had that, I mean, I think it was maybe 3 or 6 months later, we became profitable. I added more staff. I had renters at the time, and they explained to me, like, you will never, ever, ever make it where you want to make it if you have renters. You do need employees because your renter might be renting the room for $1,000, but an employee can come in and earn you $10 to $20,000 a month. And so I thought, oh my God, yeah, what am I doing with these little renters? Let's kick those out and let's get employees. And then that was where it all changed, where understanding that I can only work so much. I'm one person. And I was already doing all of those hours, but 3 people doing lashes in a studio, 4 people doing lashes and opening up every day and being open 7 days a week. And I don't have to be there 7 days a week. And I don't have to be there from 8 to 9 o'clock at night, but having it that my business ran became such a game changer. And there's so much that goes into learning how that works that entrepreneurship is a crazy journey of, I think, learning. And so to take it back to those classes, I was so desperate for the information. I was so hungry for it that I would sit in classes all day long and just take notes and figure out like where to go from here. But it paid off because years later, it was a wonderful business, and it's still alive and running today. Not by me anymore, but the people I sold it to are doing great things with it. And it just goes back to those classrooms, those conferences. It's the best bang for your buck to buy a 2 or 3 day ticket and sit in classes the whole weekend. You will learn so much, and that's can transform your business.
For sure. So I'm sure that because you are so public about your story and you do a lot of speaking engagements, and now you have your own podcast, I'm assuming people will come up to you and tell you their issues. So in your opinion, what do you think the biggest Achilles heel that you see in the beauty industry or just business in general?
I think it's different for everyone. You know, you have people that are so social media savvy, but maybe don't really understand how pricing works. They can get all the clients they want, but like me, I was working so much, I wasn't making any money because I was charging so under what I should have been. And then you have other people that maybe they don't do social media, but they understand the value of their time and they will charge for it, but they can't really attract new clients because that's not their creative atmosphere. Or sometimes you don't understand how to manage people, and you have to realize it's about those people and how they feel, not about how you feel. And if you run your whole business based on your feelings, your employees aren't going to stick around. And you learn all of these little lessons along the way, but I don't think it's just one problem with the industry or business in general. I think it's different for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like, for me at least, it's definitely like the numbers aspect of everything. You know, like, am I actually making a profit? Like just like the bookkeeping aspect of it. I think that's always been my biggest challenge.
Yeah, one thing that helped me, I'll give you this little tip quick. One thing that helped me is I went through, and it's best to do it I probably did on a pen and paper, but if you can Google Drive it or numbers, but take all of your stable bills. So your rent, your electricity, your Wi-Fi, your booking platform, your phone, all the things that you have to pay for whether you're open or not. Write them down and see how much that costs you a month. And then you have that number divided by 30. So every day that you come to work, you have to at least make that much money or you're going to go in the hole. And then you have all your supplies and your cost of doing business while you're open. So take your average service, what it costs you. So you might do a service for $50. It costs you $12 in back bar service things. Have those numbers so that you know how much you have to charge your client per hour to be profitable for the service and then also for your business. So if it costs you $70 a day to be open, because that's between your rent and your electricity, $140 or maybe it's $200, everyone's space is different, and you're only charging a $30 profit for your client, you might just cover your basis, but you have to add in how much you want to make a day too. So when you add in, kind of combine the 3 columns of here's what I expect to make. I want to go to work and make X amount of dollars every single day that I come to work, but I don't want to work 30 days. I only want to work 15 days or 30 days or 20 or 25. So you take that number. So you have your number divided by 30 days of how much money you want to make. So now how many services do you have to make that give you that much profit? And add in how many services do I have to do to cover my business being open. And that is the most eye-opening way to kind of understand cash flow and balance your books, because you might think you're profitable, and you might be if you work for free, but we don't want to work for free. And when you start factoring and here's how much I expect to make, you kind of sometimes sink back and go, wow, either I have to raise my prices or find a cheaper way to do these services, or maybe I want to look at moving locations to somewhere that's more affordable because I'm spending so much in my rent just to be able to be open. Or maybe you want to add in a staff member where it's not just you every day. Now you have 2 people paying off that rent and those utilities and that platform. So I don't know. Understanding numbers help. It's a lot, but it's so helpful.
Well, I know what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my day off. So I know that you are an avid reader, and I know that you buy 15 entrepreneur books at a time quarterly. So what are your favorite ones that you're reading right now? And then do you have any top books that have really helped you out?
Okay. I feel like books are like self-help things. Like you got to do whatever's best for you. I don't read for fun. I haven't read like a novel since I was in high school. I read for whatever I'm going through at the time. And that could be anything. I'm trying to think. I'm like looking at my bookshelf here. It really is whatever you're going through. If sometimes I need inspiration, I just started the Elon Musk book, because that's a guy who he doesn't give a flying. I don't want to swear on your podcast here, but
Oh, you can swear. You can swear.
Talk what anyone else thinks about him. And I find it so interesting that that's such a special skill to have, that sometimes when I'm feeling like I just need to look past what other people are thinking, let me dive into a book that someone else has already mastered that. I recently read a book that's The Skill of the Game, or The Art of the Game by Mark Cuban. And he is not an avid book writer. He's only written 1 book. It's a super thin book. It's easy to read, but I find him so fascinating. He's a reality star. He's very transparent, and he talks a lot about business. And it was his story from where he started to where he is, not necessarily now because the book's quite old, but it was his journey on how he got there. And I find that sometimes reading it, you can challenge yourself, like, oh wow, I should really think outside the box. And sometimes it helps just to be like, hey, it seems like I'm exactly where I need to be and doing exactly what I needed to do, and I just needed that to hear that. And other times it's like, hey, I'm struggling with leadership right now. Let me go find a leadership book. Sometimes I just went through this whole like, I want to hear the powerful women in our history. So I bought a book on all of the powerful women that have created everything that we know in this modern day life, but it started so long ago. And that was really empowering to read, just to hear the stories of all these amazing females. So I don't know, books, you got to find what works for you. But I tend to find that whatever I'm going through in the moment is the book I gravitate to.
I know I've also heard you talk about Facebook groups and podcasts, and I feel like that's such an invaluable resource that not a lot of people talk about as far as education. I've learned so much in those groups. Is there anything else that's maybe not like super conventional that you would think of for education?
I mean, podcasts are the quickest thing. Pop them on while you're driving to work. Even if you get one nugget, one little truth bomb, it's so helpful. And I'm the kind of person where if you give me one thing, I can think on it all day. But the things that come out of me having that thought are so valuable, where if I just listen to music, I never quite open up that side of my brain. It's like, oh, this is my favorite song right now, and then I'll be tired of it in 2 weeks. Where if I can listen to somebody going, damn, that's how they did that? What if I did that? I wonder if it would work for me, or if it wouldn't work for me, what would work? And if I did start doing this, what would be the ripple effect of me starting to do that? And how easy would it be for me to implement that? And I could even get started today. And then boom, you're at work where it's like, I had a whole revelation.
So I know that you started your own podcast. And before I get into that, I want to say thank you, because you actually were one of my biggest motivating factors for actually turning my podcast into reality. I remember reaching out to you, and I was like, this is a total shot in the dark, but you've always been really nice and, you know, really helpful. So I remember reaching out to you and I'm like, can you just like guide me on like a website that you found? And you sent me like a novel. You gave me all of this information. Like, this is the microphone I use. This is the recording platform I used. And I was like, I can't even thank you enough. So thank you so much for that,
Oh, you're
because
welcome.
without you, I don't think this would have actually manifested into reality. What motivated you to want to start a podcast of your own?
It is scary. I had no idea where to go. I really should take what I wrote you and put it into like an article that's accessible to everyone, because I wish I had that when I was looking. There's just not a whole lot of information on just where to get started or a platform. Everyone's very generic. Like, find a microphone you like, find a platform you like, find a topic you like. But like, how do you do that? What are those answers? Maybe I'll do that today. You guys can check on my website. But I think for me, I understood the beauty industry. I was in it. I loved it. It's so creative. It's so social. You become best friends with all your clients. And it's really, it's a great industry. And then I switched and created a product that never existed. And I was never in manufacturing, didn't even know what it was. I had to look up, like, when somebody said, you have to find a manufacturer. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. What is that? And I like Googled what is manufacturing. And it's the art and skill of making things from raw materials to consumer ready products. Well, that's a whole thing. And so understanding what it took to launch CosmoGlo, the story behind it, how I got to understanding that no one ever stopped to take care of the people in the beauty industry or the treatment room and provide quality lighting. They made all these other lightings for social media, for makeup, for all of this stuff. And then we didn't have any other options, so we started using it. But how has no one ever thought about the person in the treatment room? And it became this whole journey. If I am in the treatment room and I would like a light that is amazing, here's all the problems I would like it to fix. And then I launched it and made it. But in retrospect, you look at that whole journey. Like I said, I didn't know anything about it. I feel like a cannonballed in. And I was just so hungry and eager and looking for anyone that would take me to the next step that I eventually got there. And when you look back, it's such a journey that when you think of anything in your house, the first blender, the first ceiling fan, the first person that made a skincare product that's different than the rest, the first person that made anything, it's like there's a story behind that. And so I really started getting this respect for brands, and that every brand has a story, and it all started from somewhere. And what is that story? Like, I want to hear what that story was. What was the moment that you said, it has to be me, and I'm going to change how people are currently doing this and make this product? And so my podcast is usually a little bit of a behind the scenes of how somebody launched their idea, what it took, what they were feeling, challenges they faced along the way, because I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about the hard lessons of it. And every brand has lessons. They're now usually comical, but at the time they were painful when you cried your way through it. But people need to hear that, because we all have such amazing ideas, and maybe you don't know what the first step is or the next step, or maybe you just need encouragement to say, hey, just go do it. Nike had a great quote, just go do it. That if I can make my podcast and tell the story behind the brands and talk to the founders and how they launched their idea, then it could encourage others to be able to pursue their ideas. And I think there's so much power in that.
There truly is. Also, this is something that I never would have expected to come from podcasting, but recording these episodes and talking to different people, I've also learned so much about speaking and like my speech patterns and what comes across confident versus what comes across nervous. I know that obviously you do public speaking, so you probably have already got that down, but have you learned anything like that about yourself doing podcasting?
Definitely trying to cut out the ums. Sometimes it's better to stay silent instead of having an awkward laugh. We edit all that stuff out now, but like you listen back to it going, oh my God, why did I do that? That was so silly. It sounds so awful. And when you're speaking live, you kind of catch yourself. Oh, I'm not going to do that. I know what this is going to sound like, and it's going to sound terrible. So I'll either take a long breath or pause for a second. Sometimes if you're collecting your thoughts, ask the audience a question. It gives you 1 minute to sort yourself out. How's everyone doing? How's your day? Are you guys having a great time at this conference? Why in your head, you're like, okay, freaking out. What's my next in? What's my next in? And just that little bit of breath where they say, oh my God, I'm having a great time. That's awesome. So what we're going to talk to you about today is how to do this. And it comes across really confidently versus, hi guys, I'm up here and it's my first time speaking, and so bear with me because I'm a little nervous. And what we're going to talk about today, you've already lost the audience. They're already gone. And just having those little little questions that are really easy to grab to. One of my go-tos is, where are you based out of? Did you travel here today, or are you local? I'm local.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Who here is from out of town? Awesome. Where are you from? I'm from Louisiana. You came the whole way here from Louisiana. That's amazing. It's so great to invest in yourself and gain the skills and knowledge that you're going to learn. And today we're going to talk about this, this, and that. And that's been a really helpful thing, is just always have those questions that when you kind of stumble, you can grab those, have a question, recollect yourself, and then go straight into your topic.
I love it. I'm taking notes mentally right now. So obviously, like with the public speaking and the invention and everything like that, this is so much bigger than the beauty industry. Did you always know that you were meant to do something that was more than just taking clients?
No. I think my mind just wanders. I'm a wanderer. When I would take long bus rides, like I would take these bus rides through Cambodia and Vietnam, and I would literally pick them the longest ones possible. Like 15 hours for me, it'd be like, cool. I just want to sit on a bus and see the mountains and see how these people live and just think. And that's the way my mind works. If you actually allow me time, then the universe is endless. But if I'm doing something, I'm occupied. And I think with lashes, because the person typically falls asleep, you have so much time where you're busy, you're creating art, you're satisfied, you're fulfilled, but also they're sleeping. So my mind's just wandering and wandering and wandering and wandering. And that's where it all came about, where I'm like, God, if I could just make a light, it could be so much bigger than the beauty industry. And now we're in the tattoo world, and we're in the medical esthetician world, and we're constantly getting calls by photographers. Like, I want your light. I'm a photographer, and I have to have this because it doesn't show shadows. And for product shots, it's so important. I had a surgeon buy it because he does hand surgeons, and he hasn't had a light yet that doesn't give shadows while he's doing surgery on the hands. So you never really quite understand where your product's going to be or where your idea is going to ripple to. But it's so cool to think about it. And I did know as soon as we launched, the response was so intense that I said, oh my God, this is going to change not only the industry, but it's going to change the whole world, because our goal is to be in every country, maybe not every country, but the major ones, and distribute to all of these different service providers in multiple industries, everything from tattooing to medical to permanent makeup to lashes and facials. There's so much there that maybe when I was sitting in my room going, I just am really tired of these tripods that I keep kicking over, I probably wasn't thinking that long term. But I think as soon as it launched and we had such the huge response, that's when I was like, oh wow, we're going to change like the game.
It's so exciting. Speaking of other countries, I know one of your proudest moments was being patented in 30 countries. And I know that you actually won a patent lawsuit. So how important is it for you to protect your brand?
I have a whole team dedicated to doing that pretty much. Maybe they don't spend all day, but we have a team. 2 people from our team are dedicated to doing it, and then we can pull in more as needed. But we spend a lot, and your idea is so special. And if it's going to be a good idea, there's going to be 100 people lined up to take it. And winning for us, when we decided we wanted to go through and get our first patent win, it was a little bit of like, let's get the first one under the belt and just see what the process is like. And we can take that to everyone else going, I'm willing to protect my idea. I've already done it. So would you like to play? Because it's going to cost you a lot of money too to steal my idea. And that's been a really helpful strategy for us, as well as we work constantly with our patents. And most of the platforms are very respectful of them. Some we're fighting with, but we're working through that. But for me, I feel like if you have an idea and it's worth protecting, then protect it. Not all ideas are worth protecting. Like, patents are so incredibly time consuming and expensive. So it took me 28 years, thank God it wasn't that long, 28 months to get my design patent, but we're still waiting for our utility patent. And so I filed a utility patent in 37 countries, and we're waiting for all of those to come through. When they come through, I should be able to get the rest of this removed off all the websites. So it's a fun process as much as it's challenging and frustrating and stressful, but also very prideful of, hey, that's my idea. And you can go to walmart.com and they pull it down literally almost 100% instantly. And knowing that you were able to protect your idea that strong is something that's so powerful, but it isn't for everyone because it is a time-consuming process. And hopefully all my utility patents come through very shortly, and I can use them to build our protection case even stronger.
I hope that too. So I bought your light when I moved down to Texas, And one of my coworkers, she does permanent makeup, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, that light is so cool. I want it." And then she couldn't remember the name of it, and she just got this like janky, bootleg one off Amazon. And I saw it and I was like, "This thing sucks. It's just like cheap and, like flimsy." And she's like, "I know, I should have just asked you what it was." I was like, "You should have." So I know that usually people say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but I would be pissed if I came up with an idea and all of a sudden I'm like, "Wait a minute, that's not mine."
It's so interesting. I always tell this story. When the creator makes a product, it's usually because they value the product and the solution that it's adding value to the customer's life so much. When someone's making something to compete with that, they're thinking, how can they make it as cheap as possible and cut out all the corners that make it great? So you're left with two options. You make your own decision, but you're you're paying a lot for really cheap stuff that they're trying to figure out how to make it as cheap as possible, or you're paying for somebody that spent a lot of time developing that to make it as best as possible. And so that's your options.
Well, obviously you're the one that made it as best as possible. It's literally perfect. Going back to traveling and being resourceful, what is the country that you went to that you felt most inspired by?
Southeast Asia in general. I spent 7 months in the Philippines. I kind of rented a bungalow there and adopted a little dog because he was covered in fleas and they were selling him in this tiny little cage. And I was like, oh, I can do something about this. So I took him to the vet until he got better. I learned how to swim with me every day on the beach. And that was just life. But it's so simple. Things are so simple in Southeast Asia. And I traveled all the way through Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand. I spent a month. Cambodia, I spent 3 weeks. All of that. And I think seeing how simple life is and how happy people can be at it also helps you cut the bullshit out of American life. You don't have to keep up with the Joneses. You don't have to have the most expensive clothes and the most expensive purses and drive the fanciest car. I mean, if you want to, if that really fulfills you and you get something from it, hey, go do it. But you don't have to feel the pressure, because I remember watching people that were drying rice on the side of the road, and I was their first white person, and they spoke perfect English because they listened to the radio and watched TV, but they never actually saw one in person. And I would sit with them and explain how I got there and why I wanted to visit their country, and they could not understand, there's nothing to see here. It's rice fields and this is our bare ground house hut that you want to call it, and we all live here. Why would you want to come see that? And it was always such a dividing moment. It's because I just wanted to see, I wanted to see her smile. I wanted to see how simple life can be and how happy you are. And I learned that laughing is international. You don't have to speak the same language, but if you see something funny and you laugh and the other person does too, and you make eye contact, that's a really cool connecting moment. And I love the simplicity and resourcefulness of, we're going to break it down into life so simple. And then you see all these crazy, silly inventions. I can't think of one now, but they're clearly imitating something that they saw on TV from America, but that wasn't available at their stores to purchase off a shelf. So they made it out of tin cans and yarn and some plastic buckets, and now they have this whole contraption and it works. And you look at that, and I think those little things always stick with me, of there's always a way to make it work. There is always a way to make it work, and you don't have to have the best of the things and buy it from a shelf. You can make it your own, which goes back to when I launched CosmoGlo. Nothing like it ever existed, but I had to reach in and go, I know I can make it work. I've seen people use less and make more, so I can make this happen.
Something that I've noticed about the CosmoGlo, especially with the economy right now, I feel like so many brands are running sales and doing all this stuff, but I've noticed that you have never, at least that I've seen, you've never had the CosmoGlo go on sale. And I'm like, that's so interesting, because you are such a unique product, I suppose you probably don't even have to ever run a sale.
We have been, I don't know what you want to call it, back ordered since we launched. We're actually coming out of it for the first time, but we've increased manufacturing, I think 10 or 11 times, gone back and, hey, I know what we said, we need this amount a month, but actually we need this amount. And actually, I know we just agreed on that, but I actually need more. And so because I've always been trying to increase manufacturing, we've never been able to run sales, and it's really put us in this interesting space that I don't feel like I really want to. When you think of the Apple phone, they never go on sale, but there's a line out the door waiting for them, and people get them every new generation. I try not to. I make mine last as long as possible until it's a grandma, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy the new phone. But you look at that business model, and they put themselves at such a a pedestal because they have an amazing product, and it makes people's life so much more convenient. There's a waiting list for them. And so early on, we didn't have a choice other than, hey, you have to wait in line. That we've kind of adopted that and kept it. But the other thing too is you have to understand, when I was first launching CosmoGlo, I was looking for somebody that could make the smallest amount possible. The big companies, they want you to sign on a dotted line with $1 million invested so they can make 100,000 units for you. And that just wasn't reality. And so I found someone, my first batch started with 150 lights. And we grew to 250 was batch 2. I think 350 was batch 4, all of the stuff. And then we got to, hey, I need X amount of hundreds that you have to make every single week. And we went back to them and said, okay, we need to up that number. And then 3 weeks later, we have to up that number and up that number and up that number and up that number. And originally I started manufacturing in California. And after about 1.5 years, 2 years, we realized that they're just never going to hit the numbers that we need. So we switched to a different manufacturer in Texas, which also gave us a setback. Moving plants, it was not a clean and fresh and simple. So they stopped making CosmoGlows in California on this day, and they start making them in Texas the next day. So we had a break that pushed us behind. But we are finally to the point where we're stabilizing as far as working with them. We have meetings every single week. We're in very close terms, and we're constantly talking to them, which allowed us to just launch our gold because the numbers are increasing. They're hitting every number that the other plant never could. And they are used to making more large scale numbers, which was something I looked for the smallest person before and grew up with them, where we had a different strategy. It's like, let's go to somebody who can guarantee that they can make the numbers and grow with them from there. And that's what we've done. And that's the exciting part too, is I've always wanted to have my product go international, but we were never really able to do that with our last manufacturer. And now we're getting ready to gear up to that. So it's exciting, nerve-wracking to change manufacturers, but it's all done now and we're stabilizing all of that. But when you think back, the person that I have making my lights now, I could have never done it as a eyelash technician that had an idea. And so that story and that journey is so special to CosmoGlo that I found someone that worked for me. And I tell this on stage, you might've been in my class when I said, there is a budget and a place that will always take your idea. You just have to find them. Well, I outgrew them, and now we're at a place where I don't think I can possibly outgrow them if I try, but great challenge. Let's see how many we can sell. But along the way, it kind of built in this structure of we don't price ourselves for less. We have a waiting list, and people are constantly begging us from all around the world to send it to them, and that's the price that we are. And now I really love that about the product because it is so valuable and so wanted everywhere. That's our price, and I try and make it as low as possible. We do manufacture in the USA, which does come at a slightly higher cost, but I do try and do everything as possible as from my side to make it of value to everyone that wants the product. But yeah, it's really cool to see that people are willing to wait. And as we come out of our delay, which by the time this releases, we should be, because we're about 2 weeks away from it, is the first time in CosmoGlo history that we were able to actually hit the numbers that we wanted to do. And that's been so exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know when it comes to you guys going international, I saw that you just got approved for a Goldman Sachs business program class here in Dallas. So what are you looking forward to learning in that program?
So I didn't know much about the program. I still probably don't, but it's kind of like a crash course of business and college education. So I never went to college. I went to beauty school, and then from beauty school, you have already heard my whole life story. So there's that. And I have taken everything, I feel like, as far as I can take it without having a college education. And sometimes you kind of think, well, how would it be different if I did have a college education? And this opportunity came up. You have to apply. It's a really kind of crazy interview process. They were asking me questions that I didn't even know they had access to the information provided, that they would say, hey, can you answer this question? It's like, wow, you really dig deep into my history of how I run a business and all of this stuff, but yeah, I can answer it. And so I was able to go through and be awarded the scholarship, which starts next month. And I think for me, it's a really cool place in our business where I'm at such a pivotal point where now we're ready to go international. What does that even look like? How does that even work? We're about to just blow up big. And how do I make sure that everything is protected legally? How do I make sure that I'm doing it correctly? And that's what the course teaches, is everything that you need to know to run a business. And it's super in depth. It's one day a week for 14 weeks. And it's kind of like it's deep. So I'm excited because I feel like now of all the times, this was the exact perfect moment that I need it. Is we're coming out of our delay, we're getting ready to go international, and I wish I had that college background. And now I'm being able to deep dive into it and learn everything I need to get us to the next level.
That's so exciting. I can't wait to see what all that looks like. And I mean, everything about your story just proves that you can take a little nugget of wisdom and expand it into something huge. So I'm really excited. Seeing as how you guys are the iPhone of the lighting industry, I know you've referenced iPhones in the past and have said, I had commented how they continually evolve. And you said, I think when you have a product, you're always questioning the evolution of a product. So that being said, what is next for CosmoGlo?
We have all kinds of stuff. I finally feel like now we can play, but we're constantly improving. I mean, since this start of CosmoGlo, and so many people still have our lights. Thank you guys for those early adopters. We love and appreciate you. But it's a different light than what you used to be able to buy. It's a completely different thing. We have changed and strengthened every part of each component to make it a stronger unit. And all of those take time to find where the outliers are, find how we can strengthen and improve it, and then go on and make it better. And so I think it's a really cool evolution journey of product development. What you buy on day one is not the product you buy here we are 2.5 years later. It's fun to go through and find all of those areas that need improvement and improve on it and just watch the product stabilize and become stronger and stronger and stronger. And then with that being the CosmoGlo, now we get to have like a little bit of a fun playground and see what other products we can develop, which should be the most fun part of it all, is we can branch out into other things.
Do you still rely on your experience with clients to develop new products, or are you just kind of strictly going off of feedback that you're getting from customers?
Definitely feedback. Trade shows are great. We get to hear what everyone's thoughts are, what everyone wished that they had, and go from there. Also, just being in the industry a little bit in real life and remembering back to what I struggled with, going in and getting services done, thinking like, okay, how can I make this better? Then also the realistic side. I mean, not all products are capable of being made in an affordable way. So how can we make this something that people want, that they're going to love, that they're going to brag about, that they just got? And the client's going to walk into the room and go, oh my God, this is amazing. So what do those products look like? And that's what you're trying to figure out.
All my clients that do walk in and see my light always comment about how cool it is and how they've never seen anything like it. So obviously, I feel like a lot of people might have a good idea and they might just be too scared to actually take the steps to execute and even begin the process of creating something. So do you have any advice for people that are bumping up against that fear?
Just start. There's no clear-cut path of like, hey, here's 1 through 10 steps that you need to do. It just starts with starting and setting aside time. It could be an hour a week that you want to work on your idea. It could be a day, a month that you want to work on your idea. And it could involve just Googling. You might spend the whole day just Googling, trying to understand where this thing is going to get made or how it's going to get made. And then just being open to receiving feedback, because you're going to make some phone calls and they're probably going to say, you're not far enough down the road for us to take your project seriously. But ask, like, what would I need for you to take my project seriously? And a lot of times they want things written on paper so that you guys can have an active conversation, because everyone has a great idea in their head, but it really doesn't mean much until you can explain it on paper. So put your product down. What is it going to feel like? What's it going to be made from? What are the dimensions? Are there anything special aesthetically that you want it to have? And then from there, what would it cost to get that made? What would it look like? Do you need a prototype? People that make prototypes very rarely are the people that manufacture your product. So go get a prototype made. For me, we were on 3 different versions before I launched my first one. The first one didn't move, guys. Like, it didn't go high and low. It didn't spin. It didn't go flat across the wall. It just didn't move. And I realized that nobody wants to crawl into a light like you're crawling into an MRI machine. Like, it's just not fun. So you evolve your own product. So this idea you have in your head, it might even need to be more fine-tuned than what even you think. But I think making the prototype, making your first one, getting it in your hands so you can feel how it works, and then make progress from there, is at least getting yourself started. You can have an idea for 100 years, but if you don't act on it, then it's just an idea in your head. Where if you have an idea and decide, I'm really going to take this seriously at least one night a week or one weekend a month or something and move past it, you're going to start to see the progress happen. And usually it's really exciting to see that happen. And once you start to see the progress, I feel like it kind of takes over. You're like, okay, I'm just going to make all the time now. And I just want to make sure that this really does happen, and start talking to people of what it would take. How would I get this done? And you find your way.
I feel like there's a lot of gatekeeping in the beauty industry. There can be a lot of cattiness, especially just females. It can be very competitive. So I really admire the fact that you are so forthcoming about everything that you have learned and all your wisdom, and you're so open about everything. Did you have any sort of mentor kind of coming up in the business that helped you out?
I mean, there's been a really, really interesting and actually nice break, I feel like, in the industry the last couple of years, where people are sharing things. I mean, thanks to social media, come lash with me, come see my lash setup, come see all of that stuff, where you're beginning to get more of the behind the scenes thing. It's no longer as gatekeeping as it used to be. I used to go to classes where unless if you have a license, you can't be in here. And when you have a license, you can only buy products from our company if you've taken our classes. And it's like, that's how it used to be. And now people are like, hey, let me show you what I'm doing in a quick YouTube video or a quick social media video. This is how I remove a lash. And that kind of information is so helpful. But when I was in the industry, I mean, so I'm a information grabber and absorber. So I'm always looking for things. Paul and Tuscany, they just started the Lashcast podcast. That was so helpful for me. Going to the conferences, IEC, IBS, all of those, I would always see where the conferences are in my area, and I would just block out the days in my schedule and go for a 3-day, I think it's 3 days. Some of them are 2 days. But I would just take time to go absorb and sit in classes. And then you start to learn who the speakers are and their brand. And they're usually pretty transparent. So you grab onto them and you can learn who they are and what they're about and how their brand got started. And then you can kind of just think about like, well, if I were to have a brand, if I were to have a product, what would it look like? How would it work? And I think having the connection to the people in the industry is so powerful. They're going to be different for everyone, but social media has done a lot to help put these people in your easy scrolling day every day to see who they are. And they have bits of knowledge and wisdom that they usually just hand out. As we mentioned, podcasts are a great resource for that. And yeah, I think just kind of looking for the things that are out there.
Yeah, I think that I've kind of, I don't want to say like fallen into that trap, but I like growing up in the industry, I was always kind of on my own. I've always worked at strictly just hair salons, and I've always been the only esthetician. I'm thankful for social media and like making these connections, because it's like having your little ST besties, to like bounce ideas off of and get good advice from has been really, really helpful as far as me growing and building. But I just wanted to say thank you again for being so forthcoming about all of your information and being so open, and you're very easily approachable. And I think a lot of people will be very inspired by this conversation and everything that you have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if people are interested in your podcast, more about the CosmoGlo light, where can people find you?
You can find CosmoGlo at thecosmoglow.com. You can find me at maryharcourt.com. I do a free monthly playlist for everyone, because I know what it's like to sit in a spa and listen to the same music over and over and over again. So sign up for my newsletter at maryharcourt.com, and I will send you that every month. And then social media, Instagram is the CosmoGlo light. I think TikTok's the same. And for me, it's Mary Harcourt with an underscore at the end. But I'm always available and approachable. And just like, I'll give you a little bit of tidbit. One thing I always try and tell people, and especially you in your position with a new podcast, but you've been in the industry for quite a while and you have learned so much, is think back to who you were 5, 6, 7 years ago and how thankful you would have been to listen to you talk. And like, that should be the fire behind, like, a lot of it's me being transparent is because I would be so thankful if I could sit and talk with me 5 years ago and pick their brain. And like, you might have imposter syndrome. Like, oh my God, I don't know enough to share with someone else. I don't think I've been in the industry long enough to share. I don't think I know enough to give back, but it's so not true. Everyone has something to offer. And if you think back to who you were when you didn't know it all, you would be so thankful for yourself. So that's what really helps me be transparent and share as much information as possible, is if I had access to that when I was going through the struggles of it, I would have been so thankful. So let's just put it all out there and see who we can help.
I love that abundance mindset. And I feel like you having that mindset is really going to help continue your blessings to flow and continued success for your business. So I just want to thank you so much for your time and coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. You're such a cool icon in the industry. Everyone has to follow you,
Thank
listen
you.
to your podcast, but I think it's really cool to meet people. We met at a trade show, and I've always admired you since, because you're just making your own way, and it's so cool to see people that have their own brand and have their own just way about them and do really cool things like start a podcast. So I wish you all the best in your business and with this, and I can't wait to see you again. We'll probably meet up in Dallas when I start going to school there.
Heck yeah. Let's do it. And as I was researching you and listening to your stories about how you packed up and just moved from coast to coast and then sold all your stuff and, I'm just going to travel the world for like a year or two, then just starting from nothing so many different times, seeing as how I am still relatively new in Texas, you really inspired me with all your stories. I was like, if she can do it, I can do it. Right.
That's it. I mean, that's truly it. I think that's part of it too, is like what made me want to do this. It was a COVID pivot. You're already out of control. Like you already don't know the next step, but having been through it so many times, you can just always make something happen. You can always make something happen. There's no need to be scared to start over. And usually you level up. You're always going to be looking for the next best thing and you find it. So starting over can be terribly nerve-wracking and exhausting and scary, but it's also usually going to lead to some of the best parts of your life.
Truly. And I think for me, I did have the imposter syndrome because I'm like, okay, I know that I'm booked and busy and I'm special in Minnesota, but is that going to translate to Texas? Are my skills actually that good that I can move to another state and have people latch onto me, especially in a state like Texas where the beauty industry is so oversaturated? It's like I would go back to, okay, what sets me apart from every single other person in this industry? And for me, it always comes down to who I am as a person. There are a million different people that can do the same services that I do, but I always try to focus on customer interaction and developing that relationship. I know that that's one of my strong suits. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a building, it's a process, it's a build, but you'll be so happy that you did it. And I think you just attract the right people anyway.
Fingers crossed. So, all right. Well, thank you again for your time, everyone out there. Until next time, stay brilliant.
Thank you.